Our Holy Father, the late St. John Paul II, wanted us to celebrate this Sunday as the Feast of Divine Mercy. In the word mercy, he summed up and interpreted for the world, for us in our time, and for future generations, the whole mystery of redemption, God's great mercy. St. John Paul had lived under two dictatorial regimes, and in his contact with poverty, needless and violence, he professed profound experience of the powers of darkness which threaten the world, and we in our time can see on the evening news the power of darkness that we call terrorism. However, St. John Paul had equally strong experience of the presence of God, who opposed all these forces with his power, which is totally different and divine, with the power of mercy. He stated that mercy puts an end to evil, and as expressed in God's special nature, his holiness, the power of truth and love. God calls us to become, day after day, men and women of God's holy mercy. Mercy is a light which God has given to us in baptism. In baptism, give to our parents an Easter candle lit from the Easter candle, and we say to those parents of this child who is to be baptized, receive the light of Christ. Each and every one who is baptized must not allow this light to be extinguished. On the contrary, it must grow within us every day, and thus bring to the world God's great love. The psalmist says, "Come and hear, all you who fear the Lord, and I will tell you what he has done for me." Just as we just celebrated Easter, and we have to consider God's great mercy, his gift of birth and rebirth, born into our families, baptized into God's family, to be reborn into the communion of saints, the true meaning of Easter. Thus, we are born as members of our own families, of great family of God, on that same day. Birth and rebirth, an earthly family and a great family of God. In the gospel passage for today, we hear the story of the Apostle Thomas' encounter with the risen Lord. The apostle is permitted to touch his wounds and therefore recognizes him. And Thomas says, "My Lord and my God." Therefore, my question to all of us is, what is the purpose of the story of St. Thomas in today's gospel? We all know the story from our childhood, and we even call some people doubting Thomases. I feel that the purpose of this gospel is to prepare you and me and the church for the world we live in today, a world of doubters. You see, St. Thomas was an apostle of Jesus. He was chosen by Christ. He walked with Jesus. He ate with Jesus. St. Thomas prayed and laughed and spoke and listened to Jesus. And St. Thomas was an eyewitness. St. Thomas saw Jesus entry triumphantly into Jerusalem. He ate at the Last Supper, and perhaps he came out of hiding long enough to see Jesus die on the cross. For most of us, our Christian faith is first introduced in the home. My mother and father are the source of my faith. They are the ones that introduced me to Jesus, a man born over 2,000 years ago. And my parents told were told by their parents before them, and their parents told them. You see, it had started. It had to be a start. It started with 12 apostles. It's small faith-sharing groups. But faith wasn't automatic. Their doubt was big-time doubt, but they all came to believe. I listened to my parents, and so did my siblings. I came to an understanding about my Christian identity, so they did too. I doubted at certain times, and I made a conversion. I suppose it all is a matter of what we want to listen to. Was I naive to listen to my parents? My parents told us when we were young that we had cousins in Nova Scotia. We totally believed what they said, that we had cousins in Nova Scotia. We believed because we did not doubt what our parents told us. Was it blind faith? I don't think so. Like St. Thomas, we walked with Jesus. My parents, neighbors, religious sisters, priests, and teachers all walked with me to be in our Catholic faith. I never questioned until I was certain at times in my life I ran and hid like the disciples. The only times I ever doubted was when I was influenced by some unbeliever or decided not to follow. Each generation will have their detractors. At first, it was the apostles versus the Jews, and even the threat of persecution and death. They still proclaim Jesus as the Messiah. The church has bravely faced many challenges over the last 2,000 years. St. Paul brought us good news about Christ to the pagans, not an easy task. The martyrs faced death over Christ, as exemplified by the Canadian martyrs. The church has stood up against the reformers, the people of the Enlightenment and science, and she will have to stand up to a fair number of Canadians who believe the church should have nothing to do with our society's moral values. It is a matter of tracing back in time. Like the one who searches and plots the family tree, we have to search our faith back to the upper room where St. Thomas saw the Lord and doubted no more. And who are we to believe when we are surrounded by so much evidence that to cause others to doubt? In particular, when Christians do not act as like Christians. Who are we to follow? Who are we to imitate? We are to follow God, follow a good example of others in our life, who in particular do act as Christians. This is how the faith of doubt is countered. When we study our faith, when we read about our faith, when we listen to and are obedient to the teachings of the church, and therefore when we follow the good witnesses of others. Doubt is conquered when we see the occasional witness of the family, friends, and neighbors. When we imitate the witness and the holy men and women, like the church, like Mother Teresa, or especially our late Holy Father, St. John Paul II. We imitate them, and then we become witnesses to those we meet. Today, we have to be like Pope St. John Paul II, who have been wonderful witnesses for our Catholic faith, especially for our youth. We have to be the best of teachers and invite our youth to participate in the church through the Holy Mass, the sacraments, and the reading of sacred scripture. We are to encourage our children to read good books and to research and to counter those teachers and professors who can force falsehood to be taught as truth. This is exactly what our ancestors did. I feel that we here on earth may try hard to prove our faith, but the only real proof available is our witness and our love that we are Christians. Give to others, just as Pope St. Paul did throughout his papacy. God sent his only Son because he was so loved the world. The real super witness is Jesus Christ. The real proof is a continued story, passed on from generations to generations for 2,000 years, living witnesses of the faith which which is now our responsibility, to pass on to this generation and to the next by our own witness, to counter all doubt that surrounds you and me today. We can be like St. Thomas and doubt, or we can go out to our family and neighbors and spread the good news of the risen Lord. The words of Jesus today echo even loudly. Blessed are those who believe and have not yet seen.